Good afternoon from Transition Programs. We thank you all for tuning in again to our YouTube Live series. This afternoon, we're going to be talking a little bit about the importance of the first 3 weeks and how it looked for all of us, and just some tips that we want to give our incoming freshmen and still existing students. Just to introduce ourselves, my name is Sabrina Ballant. I'm going to be starting my junior year in the fall. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina, and I'm majoring in communication studies with a minor in leadership.
Hey all, my name is Caitlin Isley. I am a junior from Burlington, North Carolina, majoring in communication studies with a minor in leadership.
Hey guys, I'm Carolyn Bruner. I'm a junior from Fayetteville, North Carolina. I major in creative writing with a certification in publication and a minor in nonprofit management and leadership.
Awesome. So something I kind of learned, talking to upperclassmen, people who are not necessarily in my year, people from different backgrounds, is although we're all coming to the same campus at the same time, we're taking similar general education classes, we're hanging out in the same spots, the first 3 weeks of college look drastically different for everyone. So just in a general sense, what were you guys' experiences with the first 3 weeks of college?
Mine wasn't the best. I didn't really stay on campus the first 3 weeks. I went and hung out with my uncle or went home. I didn't even spend the first night on campus. I freaked out, couldn't find a parking spot, and drove back to my uncle's house and spent the night there. I was actually terrified, so going home for me was kind of my outlet. Like I didn't have to try when I went back home to make those connections. Definitely hurt me by not being there, like on campus, making those connections with those people instead of staying at home.
Yeah. For me, it was kind of the exact opposite. I never left campus. It was interesting. I felt like after the last thing in my room was put into place on move-in day, my parents said bye, they packed up and left, and I had no choice but to talk to my teammates that I just met an hour ago. And it felt uncomfortable at first, but I'm kind of very grateful for it because I had no choice but to stay and get connected. And in those first 3 weeks, I just felt like I said yes to absolutely every single opportunity. I went to every single interest meeting that I had any ounce of interest in, and just by going to places and just having conversations with people, that's where I met some people, like connections, some people that are still vital to my life to this day. And that was when I really laid the groundwork, I guess, for the rest of my experience here at UTW.
Something that stuck out to me about both of you guys' experiences that were pretty different is you left campus on the weekends a lot during the first 3 weeks, where you didn't physically leave campus at all during the first 3 weeks. So knowing that and knowing how it affected the rest of your year or semester, or even to this day going into your junior year, would you, from a student's perspective, would you say it's important for us to stay on campus for the first 3 weeks? Because I know, we're told that all the time, but actually when it comes down to it, how important is that?
I think it's like super crucial. Like you're not going to get those connections later on down the semester like you would the first 3 weeks, because everyone's on the same level as first 3 weeks. Like everyone's freaking out, everyone's scared, like trying to find their people. So that's like so much easier to find those connections then. But like there's also like so many activities, like the UNC Welcome Week, like the hypnotist, the involvement carnival, like all of those activities, you're going to find people to hang out with there.
Yeah.
So like staying for those is so important because like you're not going to get that later on down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. For me, being on campus is kind of like you're in a bubble, because everyone you talk to, everything you need, food to the doctors, to just a place to sit, it's all on campus. It's like its own little world, and everyone that you need in that world is there. And as soon as you come off campus, it's like you're outside the bubble. So staying within that bubble and making those connections that first 3 weeks is kind of, like you said, it's how you start off on the right foot, rather than everyone else is kind of taking off and you're just kind of staying behind wondering when you missed it. And so for me, I think staying on campus those first 3 weeks, that is one of the biggest tips I could say to starting your career off right at UNCW.
Yeah, and that's something I love about UNCW is that we have so many resources on campus within our community, maximum 0.3 of a mile walk, that you really don't need to leave campus, anywhere from like tiny grocery stores to our student health center. But one thing I will say is that getting out and making those connections with people and campus is kind of up to you. Like it's kind of up to the student. We can lead you there, but then, you're kind of on your own. So I understand you're a residence assistant, and for those of you tuning in, you'll hear us call that an RA. They're kind of like the mentor that is in the halls with you guys as freshmen. You serve as a resource for them, and then you're a Seahawk lady, correct? That's kind of the peer mentor that is in the freshman uni first year seminar class that every freshman is required to take, right?
Yes.
So from a student's perspective, from a residence assistant's perspective, and from a Seahawk Link's perspective, what are some ways for students to get connected to campus and with UNCW's culture?
Sure. So definitely getting outside of just your own little bubble and meeting those people is going to be the best way to get connected. But also UNCW has so many different resources. I definitely use Wavelength, which is our online good way to get involved on campus. And that's what I use my freshman year to get involved. You can get on clubs, all of our organizations are on there. But there's also a filter. So if you want free food or free t-shirts, you can put in a filter there, and only the events that have those things will pop up.
Sweet. Yeah. As an RA, it's really interesting because we have to go to all those UNCW welcome events.
Yeah.
It's our job to, especially those first 3 weeks, the importance of those is really stressed for us because we're trying to get our residents connected as much as possible. So we go to all of those, and I feel like my sophomore year, I was more involved with the welcome week than my freshman year, and I'm kind of glad for it because it was so much fun. But I feel like I was dragging my residents and the many freshmen I could find around campus, saying, "Let's go get dinner at lab here. Let's go do this. Let's go do that." And one of my favorite experiences was actually taking a bunch of my residents to Rock the Wreck, which is one of the first students welcome events. It's my favorite just because there's a bunch of blow-up houses and you're just running around the gymnasium, and it's like recess, but now you're in college. And it was super fun, and it was really interesting to just get to watch my residents actually build strong connections there. They finally went beyond the surface level of, "Hi, I'm from here, where are you from?" to hitting each other with huge the blow-up thing.
Yeah.
Where you're using sticks. That's how they met best friends, and that was so fun to watch and so fun for them. They all were smiling the entire time. So as an RA, I definitely would stress the importance of that, just because I have to go to all of them, so don't come with me.
Yeah.
It's a great time.
So I know that as a residence assistant, you go with your students to these events, and you lead them there, and you'll show them around campus, help them out with classes and anything like that. Do you think that you and other residence assistants kind of have a role in making connections to students with each other? That way, you can kind of step back and now have a group per se.
Absolutely. That's to me, I think that's the most important part. It's actually the biggest part of our job, and it's especially stressed at the beginning of the school year.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning, the students more depend on you because you're the first person they see that's openly to talk to them, that starts conversation. And then after that, it's to send them off, and they grow more mature in themselves and in the relationships that they've built. And so I definitely say that is the main purpose of the RA is to get you connected to other people. It's to get you connected to that's resources, departments, clubs, or just people in our hall. Honestly, that is our main purpose.
And you mentioned those first few events that are going on during Welcome Week. That is included in our first 3 weeks of college, and it's when we don't have classes. So it's a really fun time. Some of the events include Beach Blast, which is where we rent out a section of the beach, and there's pizza and good music, and people are hanging out and on the beach. So I don't really know how else. I don't know what else you need to hear. It sounds like an awesome time to me. And the Involvement Carnival, and like you said, Rock the Wreck. And I noticed that you said you use Wavelength, which is kind of an online system. It's an application that UNCW has where you can look up clubs and organizations and events that are going around on campus and in the general Wilmington area. And it's great that you guys got connected to UNCW and our university's culture. But in your opinion, do you feel like you developed relationships from going to these events, and long-lasting ones that kind of went past the first 3 weeks by going to these things?
For sure. That, I feel organizations is the best way to get involved with people that you're going to actually have a relationship with because you have similar interests.
Yeah.
And having those interests, like as your like foundation, is going to make your relationship stronger just because you have something already in common. And like having those same standards, values, like that's going to build a relationship on itself versus like just finding someone on the street.
Yeah.
As weird as that sounds. But I think that's a great way to meet people, and that's like how I met most of my friends my freshman year and sophomore year. But also like my Seahawks link, she helped me meet a bunch of different people. My orientation leader helped me meet a bunch of people, and like my residence assistants as well.
Earlier I said like how I went to a bunch of interest meetings with different things, and what I did, I just walked in, found the table with the most people at it, and just sat down like, hi, and just tried to have conversations with people.
Yeah.
And anyone that would actually talk to me, I just tried to talk to the whole time. And from there, I definitely made a point to not just talk to them there, but then to make plans to meet up again later. So the 9 times out of 10, if I was hanging out with someone, I'd say, do you want to get coffee and like just work somewhere? Because everyone always has so much schoolwork to do.
Right.
So that's the easiest way to hang out with people. And it was honestly the easiest way to talk to people, because then we go get coffee, probably end up talking more than we did work, so that wasn't good. But that's how I made connections, making a point to get myself out there, go to these events, but then also put myself in a position to build relationships outside of the events. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So yes, go to the events, talk to people, but then it also is on your part to make sure that relationship goes outside of it. And it's not hard. Everyone, especially these first few weeks, wants to build friendships. So it's really easy, especially during that time, to get people to hang out with you just by asking one question.
Yeah, awesome. If you are just now tuning into our YouTube live series, we're talking about the importance of the first 3 weeks of college. Some of the things we've covered so far are experiences that we've all had as students, coming from similar backgrounds, but also way different backgrounds, getting connected on campus to UNCW and its culture, and also getting connected to each other. And I love hearing these stories that you guys are sharing, and how even though you had to play catch up a little bit, that you still made connections and you went to great events and built relationships. But one of the things that may not always be sunshine and roses is homesickness, which is a pretty real topic that can happen in the first 3 weeks. It can happen, after the first semester. And we all know that homesickness can look different for everyone and mean different things. So in you guys' experiences, did you go through homesickness? Like, what did it look like for you? Like, when did you experience it?
My first semester was probably the only time that I actually experienced homesickness. After that first semester, like I didn't want to go home anymore. I'd rather stay on campus and like with the people that I had made friends with. But definitely that first semester, like I missed my family. I missed the home cooked meals, the laundry, the free stuff. My parents paid for my gas, like this, that, and the other, more so than the like actual home aspect.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And for me, I got super busy my freshman year, and so it was like all a high. I didn't have time to miss anyone because I was just so busy doing everything.
Yeah.
So really, my time of being homesick came later in my experience, like more towards my sophomore year. But I can definitely say one time that I distinctly remember feeling like, gosh, I just want my mom. It was the first time I got sick on campus. About a month in, I was angry, I was sad, I didn't feel well, and I was trudging around trying to find some freaking soup because I just wanted some soup. And it was my first time having to deal with it on my own, not having my mom 2 doors down, who would, before I even had to ask, already have soup on the freaking stove. I had to go find it myself, and I was pissed because I couldn't find tomato soup anywhere. And my sister actually lives in Wilmington, so I just distinctly remember being in the middle of the pod market on the phone with her, just screaming, honestly. Like, quietly screaming, but I looked like a maniac. I looked insane. And I finally just went back to my dorm and was just defeated. And that was really the first time I reached out to someone that wasn't in my family in a scenario like that. And I reached out to one of my friends, Erin Carter, who was one of the first people I met on campus, and she walked crackers to me. And it's a small thing. She just walked crackers to me, but to me it meant the whole world, because that was the first time I'd ever depended on someone outside of my family. And it just kind of goes to show that our relationship was much more than just surface level, and it was my first time realizing that it was like a chosen family member that people talk about. Wasn't just someone that I was blood related to, it was someone that I had met randomly by chance, and that became so important to me. And yeah, so getting sick, made me realize how homesick I was for specifically my mom, but also made me realize the connections I had on campus were more than just surface level.
Yeah. So I think that's a real thing to talk about, and I think it all kind of worked out for the both of you. But something that we can definitely take away from this is that college for sure has a lot of ups and downs. And if I'm not mistaken, you've done kind of like research on this, right?
A little bit.
Yeah,
So-
bring it out. What you got?
Hello. This is a super interesting theory of transition, actually done by the University of San Diego. Their parent family programs came up with this something called the W curve of transition, and it actually relates to all factors in life, not just coming to college. It's like any transition through life. So you can go through this wave of transition multiple times. I know we all have throughout college. So it starts off with the honeymoon phase, like the high, everything's new, crashes down to the culture shock, goes back up to the initial adjustment, pops back down to mental isolation, and then goes back up to acceptance and integration. And for me, when I first found this, it was really interesting. I read through all of it, and it just made me feel really satisfied and understood, because I finally was like, okay, so this is a thing that a lot of people experience. People experience so much that it's actually a studied field. And so for me, like the honeymoon phase lasted for a long time. For me, my freshman year, it lasted well beyond the first 3 weeks. And my first culture shock was probably when I got sick and realized that I had to depend on other people outside of my family. So a lot of people go through this W curve. Did you have any experiences?
Yeah, for sure. My honeymoon phase probably lasted like 3 days. And then my like initial culture shock was like, this isn't as great as I thought it would be. So definitely like that honeymoon phase was great. I was like, this is the best experience ever. Like I'm never going home. I'm gonna love this for the rest of my life. And then 3 days later, it's like, well, crap. And I think adjusting to that was hard for me, but also like super crucial to the rest of like my development as a person.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to hear you guys talk about where you are on this timeline and how it's not always congruent and doesn't always look the same, because my honeymoon phase probably lasted my entire freshman year. I had the excitement of first joining my clubs and organizations where I didn't have executive positions and like actual responsibilities within those clubs. My sophomore year is when I declared my major and started taking classes to do with my major. So they got harder and my professors were less likely to hold my hand throughout, which is what we talked a little bit about last week. But then, you know, especially going into our junior year, I'm sure you guys have known, like, you can go through this W again. And it may just be like not having classes with all the people that you met freshman year, or your friends may get jobs or internships, and now suddenly you have different schedules. I remember an initial, or like a culture shock for me, was I moved into UNCW with my best friend from high school, and she was my roommate. And one of the UNC welcome events is the involvement fair. And I had hung out with her my whole life, and when we went to the involvement fair, we were visiting different tables, and I remember, well, this is weird, like this is something I'm gonna have to get used to, you know, and that's like a different experience than you guys had, but it's real, but that's throughout life, right? Yeah, I appreciate this a lot. I like it. So we talked a lot about transition and up and downs and the importance of the first 3 weeks. 3 general bullet points. If you had to give tips to our incoming freshmen, what would you tell them from a student's perspective?
Yeah, I would definitely say like put yourself out there. That's going to be the most helpful tip that I would think to give you. Like if you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to make those connections or those relationships like with the people that are going to mean so much to you here. And after putting like yourself out there, definitely like staying on campus those first 3 weeks. Like I didn't, but I definitely, like if I could go back, I would have stayed. And I probably would have stayed a full year if I could have. Just because like those first 3 weeks, like you're going to make the most important connections, and that's going to be the easiest time to do it. And then thirdly, I would say like use your resources on campus, because those are going to help you get involved, but also like make those relationships with people that have similar interests as you, but like also those organizations, clubs, like that's going to help you figure out like what you want to do with the rest of your life, and so many things that are going to help you down the road.
Yeah, I'd say my first one is to just say yes. When you first get here, there's going to be so many experiences and people being thrown at you, and just take it all in and try to experience as much as you can. you'd much rather go to something, realize it's not for you, and then not go back rather than regret not going ever. So just say yes to all the experiences. Be genuine with the people that you meet. In college, you're going to meet a lot of people, and just go where you flow best. Go where you flow naturally. Don't try to force something because there's so many people and so many organizations involved in. There's no need to force it because just go where you flow because there's definitely people here for you. And finally, the biggest tip is to stay on campus, especially during the beginning. As Caitlin said, it's much easier to meet people during that time because everyone's going through the same thing. Everyone's just trying to latch on to anyone they can find.
Yeah,
So it's much easier to just build a relationship right off the bat.
for sure. I like all those points. I love that. I think that's awesome advice. Looks like we're out of time. We want to thank all of you guys for tuning in to our YouTube live series. We really appreciate it. We also strongly encourage you all to tune into next week's episode. It will be our last episode of the YouTube live series. It's same time, same place. We're going to be next Tuesday, August 6th at 12 p.m. And we're going to be talking about what I wish I knew about college and college myths. So we thank you guys again for tuning in.
Good. Okay, good.